Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:06, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Dr. Marty Makary joins us at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk to him about RFK Jr., the incoming HHS secretary. There's only two H's there. And what he intends to do with the role and how he can make America healthy again. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Today, a murder trial underway in Georgia. The man accused of killing Georgia nursing student Laken Riley waived his right to a jury, paving the way for today's bench trial. His name's Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26-year-old illegal alien. Today in court, prosecutors playing this 911 call Laken Riley placed, an emergency phone call that fateful day.
At 9:12, you'll hear that the call was hung up, and I'm going to play the call for you. At 9:12, the call was hung up by the caller, not the 911 center. The 911 center did not hang up on Laken Riley. The phone hung up. And at 9:12, they tried to call her back, and there was no answer. And I'd like the court, when listening to the call, right about 55 seconds into the call, you're going to hear a voice.
Clark County 911. Hello, this is Clark County 911. Hello, Clark County 911. Can anyone hear me? Clark County 911.
Yo Tango. There is a long break in what happens next.
That's the audio they gathered from her frantic 911 call back in February. Prosecutors say that she died due to blunt force trauma. She had her head caved in by the man who attacked her. They say that man is sitting in that courtroom today, Jose Antonio Ibarra, an illegal alien. Here to discuss all of this, Jonathan Fahey is with us now. He's a former ICE director, former federal prosecutor. Jonathan, thank you for joining us again, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This trial on television screens today and now here on our air playing some of this audio, it really brings into stark focus the chaos that's happening in our country as a result of that open border.
Yeah, this thing is like we've all been tracking this since February when this happened, but it really just sort of seen some of the evidence, and I didn't watch the whole thing, and listening to that tape now, it's so horrific. And to what happened to this young woman, and the thing that makes it even worse, which is hard to say it could be even worse, but this was entirely preventable, and not just in the theoretical way, but this administration had multiple times that they could have apprehended this person, deported them, but instead, because of their open borders policy, they let him go for when he was in the border, when he was arrested in New York, and when he was also stopped for shoplifting somewhere in Georgia. So it's like, this is so preventable. I do not know, and I think this should have been the day Joe Biden brought Mayorkas into his office and said, we're done. We're going to start being serious. We're going to put the American people first instead of the illegal aliens, and give me your resignation now, because it's so bad. And just, it's like reliving it. I can't even imagine this family having to sit there. And I've been in courtrooms prosecuting people with the victims' families, and it's the hardest thing for these. I mean, I can't, how do you even describe it? But it's so bad. And, again, when it's preventable and our government chose instead to put this political agenda of open borders ahead of Laken Riley's life and safety, it's so infuriating.
Yes, it is. It's totally infuriating. And it sounds like the prosecutors have every last piece of evidence necessary to conclusively convince the judge here that he's completely guilty, including DNA, his DNA under her fingernails, which is an unfortunate but classic telltale sign of who attacked her. And so now their family is without her. And this is a guy who is from Venezuela. He illegally immigrated into the United States in 2022, right near El Paso, Texas. The federal government has records of all of this. They had him in custody. They released him. He commits all sorts of crimes in the United States. We have sanctuary cities who are protecting such criminals. This is a system that desperately needs to stop and needs to be fixed, Jonathan Fahey.
Yeah, absolutely. And on January 20th, Trump, President Trump or President-elect Trump is going to make this. He has made it a priority, and he has Tom Homan as a border czar, but they're going to be ready to rock and roll on day one, and they're going to get the criminals out, and that's the priority that they're going to have. And the funny thing is, I know you watch the news, but you see these governors, it's Pritzker and the governor of Massachusetts saying we're going to basically stand in the way of ICE, and you can't go through me, the Pritzker thing, when it's like they're going to stand in the way to prevent criminals from being deported. Again, it's like putting the illegal alien criminals ahead of the citizens' safety and their safety. It's astonishing to me that they're still doing this.
When you have local governments who refuse to work with the feds and say, hey, we're about to release an illegal foreign national from this jail, is there any way that we can outmaneuver them, that the federal government will know anyway? What can be done, if anything, Jonathan Fahey, to combat this?
Well, a lot of times these guys are getting arrested, and ICE is getting notified that they're arrested and they're illegal, but what they are not getting notified is when they're releasing these people. So, I mean, what can ICE do? I mean, I think one thing they can do is, hey, camp out of these jails and put pressure on them, put political pressure on them, that they're going to be there waiting for them. And, they should publicize every time they release a sex offender or somebody else that should be deported. It should be on the news. It should be publicized. But I think President Trump's one of his biggest sticks he's going to have, whatever the bill they pass, they need to do something that either withholds money from sanctuary cities or provides money to non-sanctuary cities for this type of thing, because that's the big stick they have. Once these cities start losing money, they'll probably many of them will get in line. So I think you can do things like that. The other things that you can do, I was actually talking to Tom Homan earlier today, but it's like you can do things like deputize or put local police officers on immigration task force to have them help ICE agents to arrest some of these people. So really increase your manpower dramatically very quickly. And there are plenty of jurisdictions that aren't in favor in sanctuary cities and actually put their citizen safety first and would be more than happy to help because they know it would benefit everyone.
We need like a national sanctuary city whistleblower law or something, like where you protect members of law enforcement who call in and say, hey, I just want to anonymously report, we took this guy into custody, definitely illegal, and you should know about it. And there can't be reprisal against that guy for alerting the federal government.
Right, exactly. That's a really good idea. Or why don't we just take it another step further? We have this Remain in Mexico policy that's going to get reinstituted. Why don't we say for all the people here that are here illegally, you have to go to Massachusetts and maybe remain in Martha's Vineyard policy until your case is heard, and see how much they like it, because they like the show of all of this performative stuff, but when they actually have to deal with the consequences, like when Ron DeSantis sent 49 people to Martha's Vineyard and they didn't even get a chance to look at the gingerbread houses before they were kicked out. And so this idea that make them eat this stuff. Hey, if you guys want them, you get them, but the rest of us have a right to have a safe community and have a right to have our laws enforced and have a right to put American citizens ahead of illegal aliens, which we have not. And we talk about this a lot. I cannot think of one instance, and I want to hear about it, where this administration put the interests of American people ahead of illegal aliens in any respect. And I cannot think of any, and I cannot think of a single thing they've been willing to deny in terms of benefits to illegal aliens. And I'd love for somebody to correct me on it, but, I don't think there is one.
No, they dole out absurd benefits to illegal foreign nationals, and we have veterans living homeless in the streets, and they act like that's a totally normal arrangement, that their priorities are correct. I want to ask you about to what extent is it possible that this problem gets worse ahead of Inauguration Day? We've been talking about on the show that just ahead of the election, President Trump made an announcement at his rallies that he would impose really punishing tariffs on Mexico if they continue to allow the waves of humanity to come across our border. And it looks like that has had some success. Mexico has been blocking up quite a few people who've been trying to head north to the American border. It looks like because they're very concerned that President Trump will impose those tariffs come Inauguration Day. But then simultaneously, the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that the cartels, the smugglers, are telling illegals that they need to rush to the United States before Trump comes into office. So handicap this for us. What's going on, Jonathan Fahey?
Yeah, the smugglers with their sort of the Christmas or end of the year sale, trying to get people in, because they're getting paid like what, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 per person that they're smuggling up to the United States. So they're going to still want to keep people coming. And I still think if you are going to come here illegally, it's still a better bet to try to get here in the next few months than it's going to be starting January 20th. And then hopefully you can find a way to hide and stay. But they have to know it may not be worth the amount of money that they're spending, because if you're going to spend $7,000 to come here and you get kicked out within, say, a few months or even a year, it really wasn't a good move for you. But I think your point when you're talking about the tariffs with Mexico, we need to do this with all of these countries. Like Venezuela won't accept deportees. So we've been bringing in, as part of this overall, this 30,000 a month, these Venezuelans that the Biden administration has been flying in here remarkably, and then Venezuela won't accept them back. Well, there's got to be things like tariffs or other economic sanctions that we could use on them as well, because we have the big stick, and Mexico knows it, and we need to use it because they've been a part of this problem, or at least allowing it to happen with the drug cartels, and we've been harmed by it with fentanyl, with all of the other costs that we talk about, with the overdoses, the crime, but then you have the monetary cost of what, $150 billion last year just for the tax dollars to pay for illegal immigrants. So we've been taken on the chin with this, and it's time for it to stop. And it's time to and there's nothing wrong with putting our citizens first. And I don't know why that ever became sort of even controversial to say that, but it's time to stop. And January 20th, it will begin to stop. And I think people are it's a high risk game to try to come here now.
Lastly, Jonathan Fahey, we spoke with Tom Homan earlier this week. You mentioned you were speaking to him earlier this morning, and he was describing this arrangement that he's going to have as he works on this. He's reporting directly to the President of the United States as the borders are, and he's going to be working very closely, joined at the hip with Kristi Noem as DHS Secretary. What do you make of this arrangement and the people that President Trump has tapped in order to run this important mission?
I think it's great because a couple things about, like, Tom Homan has the ultimate amount of respect you can have from law enforcement. These guys are thrilled to have Tom back in some role in this. And also, this isn't just a DHS role, because it really is. You need DHS, you're working with DOJ, you're working with state and local. So it's good to have somebody sort of coordinating that, making sure everyone is sort of on the same page, because it's not just simply the ICE CBP. And I think a lot of what Tom can do with respect to Kristi Noem is sort of take some of the pressure off that issue from her, so she could focus on, because as you know, part of the Department of Homeland Security is Secret Service, which we've seen seems to be a mess. FEMA seems to be a mess. So let her focus on other parts of the agency and let him do this. And also with Stephen Miller there as the Deputy Chief of Staff, I mean, he's, behind, Remain in Mexico and so many of these things, so many of these creative ways that they were able to deal with this problem without the help of Congress. So it really is, you've got the brain trust, you've got the leadership, and I think it's going to work. It's going to be effective, and I think everyone is rowing in the same direction, meaning the Republican Party. I don't think there's going to be pushback internally if a bill comes their way, or if a bill comes Trump's way. It's going to be very, very tough on illegal immigration, and I think they'll give the tools that they need to enforce the laws.
All right, Jonathan Fahey, as always, great to have you with us. Thank you, sir, for your time today. Cecil is calling in from Fredericksburg now on line 1. Cecil, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. It's Cecil, by the way.
Oh, Cecil. Forgive me, Cecil. Thank you for calling.
So Mexico made it our problem with letting all these foreigners come up through the southern border.
Yeah.
And we're talking about spending millions of money to send them back to their country. No, you came in through the southern border, you go back through the southern border, and it's Mexico's problem to do whatever they want to with them.
Amen. I love that idea.
It's simple.
I know. I'm certain. I'm guessing it's on other portions of the border, but on the southwestern portion of the border, right under San Diego, for years the Border Patrol, when they got somebody into custody and then they would eject them, all they do is they literally open a door and they shove them through it. There's a door.
Yeah, there you go. That's what we need.
That's what we need.
Sense. Trump is wanting to go with common sense. It's a common sense solution.
It's a common sense thing. Yeah, you come through that door. You're lucky I don't shoot you. I'm just going to turn you around and push your ass right out the door. Forgive me. Dump that, would you? If you come through, we're going to shove you out the door. That's what we need to do. Hey, coming up, Dr. Marty Makary will be here. We'll talk to him about making America healthy again. The left hates it, which means it's the right thing to do. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Oh, the media, they are very, very angry that RFK Jr. wants to make America healthy again. How could you be upset about that? Well, I guess maybe if you were paid off to be upset about it. Here's MSNBC. Oh, AOC and Joy Reid.
Some of the concerns you have about what he might do to HHS.
Yeah, I think it's what's very important, too, is that, yes, there are these concerns about that. You have a baby, and anywhere in the world, I mean, protecting against polio, against measles, against very serious communicable diseases that, I mean, we would be talking about going back to the, 1700, 1800. I mean, this is serious.
Yeah, this is very serious. A medical expert, AOC, telling Joy Reid, also a medical expert, that polio is coming back because RFK Jr. is going to be the secretary of HHS. It's really staggering to hear that. Joining us now to discuss the actual science behind all of it, Dr. Marty Makary, professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and Bloomberg School of Public Health, and the author of the book Blind Spots, When Medicine Gets It Wrong and What It Means for Our Health. Dr. Makary, good to have you back with us, sir.
Good to be with you, Vince.
All right, so AOC says that babies are going to get polio now because RFK Jr. is coming into HHS. What do you think?
Well, everybody should be getting their polio and MMR vaccine, and I don't think anybody's questioning that. I mean, I don't know why she's planting all this sort of doubt out there. I mean, RFK himself has said he's not anti-vaccine. Why stir that and magnify that whole kind of skepticism? So it's mind-boggling to me because they're having a meltdown. Here's a guy who is challenging some deeply held assumptions, calling for gold standard research to support what we do, addressing the childhood disease epidemic, helping us live longer and feel better. And they find a way to make it partisan. To me, that's unbelievable.
Well, he's the only, I mean, other than you, than a few others, he's one of the only people I've heard in a long time say, actually, the government is not helping us. They're, in some regards, they're actively hurting us when it comes to our health.
That's right. It's a great paradox that they're saying he's a threat to public health when these are the same people who are pushing for Ozempic in 6-year-olds. These are the same people who told us for 20 years that opioids are not addictive. These are the same people that pushed vaccine mandates in young, healthy 16-year-old girls and prolonged school closures. And so they're coming now and lecturing us about the dangers of RFK Jr. No, the danger is staying on the current path that we're on, when Alzheimer's is increasing, cancer in young people is increasing, autoimmune disease are increasing, diabetes is increasing, infertility is increasing, and nobody wants to talk about it until now with RFK Jr.
Yeah. In fact, to your point, yesterday the New York Times covered a study just out from the Lancet that says that now 3/4 of all American adults are overweight or obese. And if that's the case, Dr. Makary, that means that there's a lot of second and third order effects that come with having all of that weight that are devastating Americans.
It's really ironic. What we're witnessing is a medical establishment turn a blind eye to the root causes of obesity and diabetes. That is ultra-processed foods, changes to the microbiome and gut health, refined carbohydrates, and chemicals that are common in our food that weren't around 2 generations ago. Many of them are banned in Europe. And there's this sort of complete disregard for the root causes, and instead a culture of just medicate more. And as a result, we have the sickest population in the world, the most medicated population in the world with no end in sight, and the most expensive healthcare in the world, which is burdening every family and business. So it's very dark what's happening right now. And somebody has to stop and say, let's look up, take our heads up, look around us and see what's actually happening.
And it seems if you're going to be able to stop it, you can't be captured by the organizations that corrupted it in the first place. So I was going over, when we started the show today, I was bringing up a data point that I always find shocking, which is that the federal government recommends 10% or less added sugar in your diet each day. So if you're eating 2,000 calories a day, they say up to 200 calories of it can be added sugar and you would still be healthy. That's their recommendation. That's insane to me. Is that insane, Dr. Makary, that the federal government would recommend any added sugar?
Added sugar for babies? Well, let me tell you where that very scientific recommendation came from. They pulled it out of their butt. The kids, I'll tell you the number of grams a child should have of added sugar as a baby. 0. I mean, no one is willing to actually speak truth or use data. We have an NIH that is so lost, they're busy funding bat coronavirus research in China. They can't study school lunch programs. We have an FDA where the entire emphasis is on drugs, and there's not enough emphasis on the F, which is for food. And someone who says, hey, we have to take a look at this, they're being excoriated. So I think it's a great irony because we have healthcare corruption, and that should not be a political issue. Everyone should be against corruption. You look at who wrote the food pyramid, you look at the guidelines that come out of the government, you look at the medical establishment and all the organizations that receive millions of dollars. All of our doctors' groups receive millions of dollars from pharma. So I cannot believe that people would find the issue that RFK Jr. is talking about, addressing healthcare corruption, to be a partisan issue. And I think it's really just an argument that lives in the echo chambers of media. I think in the real world, this issue is uniting Americans and parents.
Well, but inside of those echo chambers, they do a lot to try and scare Americans into compliance and convince them that he's a kook, he's a whack job, and that real Americans should align with the pharmaceutical companies on everything and not ask any questions. That seems to be the posture that they demand of us. But I think a lot of Americans are waking up to this. I think I've seen in some of the data, a lot of suburban mothers are very concerned about this, which is why they came around. They were supportive of the Make America Healthy Again cause that we saw out of President Trump alongside RFK Jr. I wonder, Dr. Makary, one of the things that I hear some conversation right around now, because RFK apparently wants to make this recommendation, is fluoride in drinking water. He thinks that it's a bad thing and that the government should no longer recommend it to localities that they put fluoride in drinking water. This is a practice that was started for dental health, but there have been some studies that claim that it has a negative effect, at least in boys, on IQ. What do you know about this particular thing, and is that the right course to take?
Yeah, there's been a few epidemiologic studies now in top journals, including JAMA Pediatrics, one of our biggest journals in pediatrics, that has found an association between fluoride being added to the drinking water and lower IQ scores in children. And there's a concern that fluoride may build up or affect the learning center of the brain. But there's also another concern that fluoride may be killing bacteria in the gut microbiome, because the fluoride does reduce cavities because it's killing bacteria on the teeth. Well, what do we think it's doing to the gut microbiome then? Millions of bacteria that normally live in the gut that are involved in digestion and immunity and mental health and mood. Many of those bacteria are involved in hormone regulation and other important physiologic processes. Most of our body's serotonin involved in mental health and mood is made by those gut bacteria. So fluoride may be also killing those bacteria or altering the gut microbiome, which is why many of us have said it's important to question this.
Yes.
Europe does not add fluoride, 3% of the drinking water in Europe. And I've written about this topic in the book Blind Spots that just came out and beat Hillary Clinton's book, which nobody's interested in reading. And I talked about the blind spot of fluoride, yet the CDC has it on their website that adding fluoride is one of the great 10 greatest public health achievements in modern history. That is dogma. It may be doing more damage than good.
Yeah, because the claim is that it's just been great for dental health, but just like with anything, there are trade-offs, right? I mean, it seems like a big deal that we're putting medicine in the water, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, we're adding a chemical. Now, people would argue that this fluoride chemical appears naturally, and that in some water streams it's already there.
Yeah.
But are we willing to evolve our position as the data come in, as we're seeing data on its effect on IQ, as we're starting to see data that it may affect the gut microbiome, or are we just set in our ways?
Yes.
And the medical establishment, it needs to be more open-minded.
So, you and I have discussed all of the kind of negative trends we're noticing in public health. Among them are the skyrocketing obesity rates and the associated diabetes rates with that. We're watching as fertility has fallen off a cliff, that people are having a very difficult time having babies who want them as a result of fertility declining dramatically. Chronic disease has exploded. And so much of that has happened over the course of the years that we're talking about, really over the course of the last half century. And that's where we started adding so many of these chemicals to foods and where we started fluoridating the water. Do you think that it's taking a hard look at those two areas, maybe in particular, that could reverse some of those trends?
Yeah, I think when you have unexplained epidemics exploding right in front of our eyes, just in our lifetime, that's something that we have to take a close look at. Anyway,
yes.
I have to run here. It's great talking with you.
Okay. It's always good talking to you. Thank you, Dr. Marty Makary. I know he's a busy man, always grateful for his time. So there he is, Dr. Marty Makary, professor at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and the Bloomberg School of Public Health. And his book, again, Blind Spots, When Medicine Gets It Wrong and What It Means for Our Health, beating Hillary Clinton, which Hillary Clinton is she's like a kind of a fluoride for the brain. She melts your mind. Yeah. So Dr. Marty Makary, and he's apparently pleased with RFK Jr.'s role to make America healthy again. It does seem like an important mission. Whatever happened to the presidential fitness test, or just encouraging physical fitness, encouraging dietary well-being. That's all you have to do. It's not meddling in people's lives. It's just not screwing them up. It's not screwing up our veterans, not pumping them full of drugs that hurt them, which the federal government has done. Seems like a really basic thing. And just while I'm on the issue, I have to say, I don't know about you, but in my life, kind of the chaos of the last couple of years, has it made you sort of double down on the basics at all? Like the last 3.5 years of Biden, have you taken an inventory at all? Has your family taken an inventory at all? You looked and you're like, well, man, we really got to get back to the basics. And what are the basics? The basics, what I mean by that are more self-reliance, figuring out more about how you can break free of all these systems around us. I can't tell you how many women I know who have started growing their own food or trying to eat more natural at home and kind of break away from the system. religion. Do you have friends who are going to church at rates that you've never seen before? I do. I'm seeing a lot of that. A lot more people are thinking spiritually. A lot of them are. And on the health side, I can tell you, me personally, I kind of drifted away from the gym for a long time. I'm back at it now a lot, and I love it. I love it. I just love being. If I exercise, I feel so much better. So much better. You eat well and you exercise, you feel so much better, and then all of the other things that come out of that are just pay off exponentially. You can sense it. Everything about your life improves if you take control of it. And I do think that that's happening right now. There is some sort of, it's even a big thing on the right. Have you noticed this? Corey, you must have seen this too. There's guys on the right, guys I know, all over X, and what do they say? What are the things that they preach? They say, go to church, lift weights, eat well. You know, some of them are on nicotine. They recommend not Zyn anymore. Tucker's one is Alp. They're on the Alp. I'm not going to sit here and recommend nicotine to you, but some of these guys are all in on it. That's the key. First principles. And it'll make your life a lot better when you get back to basics. All right, I got to say it. Scott Jennings is a national treasure. This guy is on CNN. They're talking about RFK. He's the one person delivering common sense. Listen to this.
But there's no managerial experience in his resume. There's nothing that says he is qualified to do this job that is in charge of the health of all of us, all these different lanes. If he has views and has insights around food sources, around vaccines, then those should be given in advisory roles.
Why?
Because
what were the qualifications of the previous ones?
Well, I think it's important to always remember that you put yourself. Say that again.
What were the management qualifications? I mean, Xavier Becerra.
I'm not talking about the previous. I'm looking forward.
But you're calling into question whether he could actually do this job, and I think it's
absolutely. I think America is now, and I think
it's important to discuss it because Xavier Becerra was just a lawyer and a politician with no management experience.
So does two wrongs make a right?
Sylvia Burwell was a Walmart lobbyist. Donna Shalala was a university person. Look,
RFK Jr. is a nut.
Okay, so that's different than what you just said. You just said he doesn't possess the requisite managerial experience, but then we get to the real issue here, which is you want to insult the man, which is your right to do because you opposed him in the election. But you, Doctor, are raising the issues that he has been raising, and I think they're appropriate questions to raise. I don't know whether he can be confirmed or not. The vaccine stuff at the table is obviously going to be the flashpoint of this hearing. But I'll tell you one thing. This whole issue of the CDC and these public health agencies, look, public trust in the health regime in this country is as low as it's ever been.
But why?
It's because of COVID.
Right.
Because of school closures. Because of mask mandates. Because this country was... But let me just finish. Because this country was drugged through a bunch of condescending and heavy-handed mandates that all turned out to be garbage, and that's why it's low, and the questions are valid.
And RFK is the answer to all of that.
Yeah, but RFK helped promote the assault on the CDC that lowered the disinformation that led to more than a million deaths, Scott. More than 1 million deaths in the United States, higher than any other industrialized nation per capita. That's the result of failed policies, the demonization of the conspiracy theories.
Whose policies?
Scott Jennings, God bless him, just up against, they have to put panels of like 50 people against him, and there's still no match. Good for him. Look, I'm dead serious. The idea of him as White House press secretary is more and more appealing with each passing day. He should do it. He's very good at it. You should have a great weekend. That's what you should do. And listen to the great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.